Hello and welcome to another episode of 21st Men. My name is Dr. Cornelius Jones and I'm here today for a wonderful discussion.
I'm AJ, your friendly neighborhood pharmacist, and I'm looking forward to talking about insecurities and modern manhood. So, Dr. Jones, I have a lot of questions about this because as a young man myself, young professional black man in the pharmaceutical industry, I just have a lot of, be honest, insecurities that goes about within myself throughout the day. One particularly is one thing called imposter syndrome, which I really feel that I do not deserve at times to be in the spot that I'm in as a pharmacist, which may sound crazy just thinking about it and talking about it out loud. But even though I do have the PharmD, I do have the clinical knowledge, there are a lot of questions that come to me, and sometimes the first thought is, man, what if I don't know the answer? And so just as a psychiatrist, if I correct me wrong, having a PhD yourself, how do you get through the barrier of thinking that you're not capable of being a PhD certified, educated black man?
A great question. This may sound arrogant, but I don't have that insecurity, right? I trust my knowledge, I trust my clinical experience, as well as being able to do the job effectively. Because here's the truth. If I'm sitting down with somebody and I can't help them navigate through whatever they're dealing with, they have no business coming back to me again. But that comes through confidence. People come in, they want to make sure that you know what you're talking about. And that's how I kind of go with it. Now, your industry obviously is a lot different because you're dealing with medicine and making sure that you give people the right things to put into their body. What I'm giving people is knowledge and perspectives, to put into their head for them to chew on. So that's very different. Your responsibility, not to diminish my own, but it's certainly different. And when you think about insecurity, insecurities always come from within. And that's not something that other people can impact. Even though in society we often hear people talking about their self-esteem has been affected, and I always look at that and just get them to understand the key word to self-esteem is self. Can't nobody else on the outside of you impact that until you give them authority. So you being a young professional, as a pharmacist, you went to school, you proved yourself, you've been tested, you've proved through the state licensure board that you have what it takes. Now it's up to you to walk in authority and have the confidence necessary around your peers as well as older pharmacists, because people are relying on you. So I hope that made sense to you.
No, that's a good word. That's a real good word. I receive that, and knowing that being 2 years in the game, I'm always learning. One thing I do have an issue with is people pleasing. So you have a patient who has their own interpretation of how medication works, and I have facts to back it up. They still have that opinion about how the drug affects them. So that's something that I very particularly listen to. So even though I do have facts to back up statements, they're the ones taking the medication. So that's another thing too that makes me wonder, if this medication, there's no evidence about it having these side effects, but this patient says it does, that doesn't make sense to me. So why? I just want to explore that more sometimes. And I have two routes to take sometimes. One is give them the facts and move on and tell them, okay, let's find an alternative, or really just disprove everything they just said and just say, no, that's wrong, keep taking it, which a lot of pharmacists do. A lot of pharmacists push me to move in that direction. But part of me feels that I want to listen to the patient, be able to find an alternative, even though the facts don't back it up. They're the ones who are taking the medication. They're the ones who are choosing not to take it. The risk outweighs the benefit in regards to them not taking it, and they're having to deal with, like, say for instance, they're taking a medication that helps with their cholesterol, and they say, hey, this cholesterol med is affecting this, and I'm not going to take it, like, period. I'm just not going to take it. If normally other pharmacists would say, hey, you need to take this, you need to, I'm not going to do anything else, just take it. It's an authoritative command that they give to patients. Me, on the other hand, I choose to listen to what they have to say and say, okay, what's plan B? what do we want to do to help with getting another medication into them, or help them with getting the treatment that they need? So it's a lot that goes through my head is what I'm trying to get at.
So what I would remind you, we took an oath to do no harm, right?
Amen.
And if you stay true to that oath, then you stay on the side of right. And if the patient is saying to you that, hey, this simply doesn't work for me, then you also got to give consideration to what that person is saying about their body, because medicine itself is so broad, and unfortunately, there's not one cure that fixes everything in everybody. So perhaps that just requires an adjustment, but my advice to you would be to not dismiss what that patient is saying who's taking the medication, as well as not trying to reinvent the wheel. When people come to me, I realize that they come in a lot of times with a lot of different baggage, but what I can never do is try to do for them what I just did to the person who perhaps just left out of my office. Even if it's the same situation, you have to personalize it, and you can only do that by being authentic with that particular, client or patient that you have at the time. So as patients are coming, you know what the science behind the medicine says, but it would also be foolish to not listen to the people that's taking that medicine, because you don't want to set yourself up for malpractice or litigation.
Absolutely.
Issue, right?
Absolutely.
And even though you can always say, well, hey, I've just fill the prescriptions, but if that person says, no, I came and told you, right, Dr. AJ, that this wasn't working for me, and you told me to suck it up, right? That wouldn't be the right approach. So when you think about the insecurity aspect, and going back to what you said, you've been in pharmacy for 2 years. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your level of knowledge is any less than somebody who's been in the field for 10. And once you've earned your title, no one can take it back. And you shouldn't even attempt to give it back, because you have to wake up and say, okay, you know what? I'm a pharmacist. I know what I'm doing. These people are dependent on me. And that's the way to approach a situation like that. And that leads me to the other part of this conversation, which is about the pressures that we face as men. So is that pressure coming from strictly your colleagues? Is that coming from perhaps your fear of failure or letting down, or what other people have put on you?
No, this is a good question. So to be honest, it really is a fear of failure, and trying to prove myself to whoever comes to me. And sometimes it's to a fault where I'll overdo it and stress myself out and confuse the patient at times, because I take it overboard because I want them to get the best care possible. I also have a fear of saying no, to be honest, at times.
Listen, you went to school for this. You've already proven yourself, so there's no reason for you to doubt yourself. Yeah,
that's a fact. So I went to a PWI school over in Ohio. I was the only black male pharmacy student in that location. I started a company, actually started an organization for minority students at the school, learned to counsel patients, learned to do rotations by myself in Cleveland at the hospital that I was at. So there was a lot of pressures that I dealt with in that situation, but I tacked it head on, got A's, went through, got the degree, and moved on here to Jacksonville, Florida, did my residency over in Palatka, and then now I'm starting at working for a year now at an independent pharmacy, and I'm enjoying it, just having the encounters with the patients and talking to them about their medications and just being real and authentic. That's really my aura that I give. I really feel like that's the stance that I give to patients, so it's really enjoyable to do that. There are a lot of pressures working there as well. As a man, what are the pressures that you face in life?
I think that pressures for men in general, and specifically myself, that's an ongoing, life experience, because no matter what you do, new pressures always find a way of creeping in. So I'm in private practice, obviously. I have a responsibility of making sure that I'm doing enough to maintain the current clientele, as well as be able to attract new, right? So that's a pressure. Other pressures of being a black male, a black professional male, people expect for you to know all the answers when at the end of the day I'm just a human being. And what I do my best is to give people my professional perspectives and not my personal opinions, because personal opinions can affect them. But they come in and sometimes they even act as if I have a crystal ball. Hey, I'm here to see you. You should know what's wrong with me. No, I should not. Right? This is your journey. So, that's somewhat of a pressure at that moment, because that's you being on an interview of some sort. Just make sure that you are right and correct fit for them. Then you have the pressures as a father, and I have the pressure as a business owner of multiple businesses. So there's no shortage of pressures, but how I respond to those pressures are what defines me, in my opinion. I'm a human being. Do I get upset? Do I get mad? I would say that I don't get mad. I get upset, and that's real temporary. But that's normally not necessarily from pressures. It's just from the combination of life. And we each have the ability to control what we allow to affect us. And that's what I look at pressure as, right? I know that all of these different things are coming in my direction, but how am I going to strategize and address them all without becoming overwhelmed? So that's how I deal with pressure, professionally and personally. How about yourself? What do you do in pressure situations?
To be honest, I meditate, and I really feel there's power in prayer, just giving it to God and venting to my coworkers, or sorry, not my coworkers, my friends and my family, people who I have genuine relationships with and who care for my well-being. I care a lot about other people, even people who don't care about myself, about me. And so when it comes with pouring into other people and they don't return anything back, it could drain your tank. It drains my tank. And so what I'm looking for is, how can I get my tank back to being full again, so that way I can pour into others again, especially in my career, similar to yours. I have patients who come to me with questions and they seek answers, whether it becomes with medications, adverse effects, their insurance, political things. I even have questions that has nothing to do with my field. So I feel called to answer those questions, whether it is to say I'll get back with you, or I know it right off the top of my head. That can get draining at times because it's constant. It's always moving. I can't seek them filling my tank from them. I seek it through my fiance, my mom, my dad, and from the Lord. And so that's what helps me to deal with the pressures at work. However, there are pressures at work that are positive in light, that keeps me focused and keep me moving forward in my purpose. I have a pressure right now to start my own business, a diabetic clinic. This is something I'm very passionate about. There's a lot of information that goes into it, a lot of business planning that goes into it, but I'm gonna attack it head on. I'm excited for it. It's a lot of pressure right there, but I could just see it right now, just being able to have a room of people who have their blood sugars not controlled, and educating them about their medications, educating about things that doesn't require about medications, and seeking the resources to put in so that they can go to those resources to help improve their blood sugars. So what are some positive pressures that you deal with that keeps you motivated?
Poverty, right, is a pressure that I'm familiar with because I grew up in it. So that's also a motivating factor. I've been there and did that, and I made a decision years ago that would never be my own personal, doing. So the positive thing for me is being able to have a lot of different things on my plate at once. I work extremely well under that type of pressure, where I can write books and start new businesses and be all over the country, it seemed like, but being effective in the process. So that's a good pressure and problem to have at the same time. But bad pressure would be to take on everybody's stuff. And I heard you say that a few moments ago, and I just wanted to, caution you that if you are constantly, like you said, pointing to other people, you end up empty. So one thing that I do when I leave my office, I do a data dump, right?
Okay.
All the different issues that I've heard of that for that day, I leave everything right there. I don't talk about it when I get home. My wife, my kids, hey, how was work? Prayer flag help somebody and then hurt anybody, and that's the extent of it. Because if not, then that can become pressure all on its own. It becomes a distraction from family time. We're talking about all the different things that's going on. So that's where the balance in that comes in.
Got you.
So
Gotcha.
and then not only that, you don't want people who know you to be giving you this biased advice. Like your friends and family, they're going to give you biased advice, and that becomes a problem, because if you're messing up, they may not feel comfortable with necessarily being truthful with you. So that could be pressure that you're placing on them.
On them.
Right. So keep that in mind. AJ, I certainly have enjoyed this conversation with you today. I think it's been very empowering on both ends. And the thing that I would certainly say to you, and as well as to others, is that when we find ourselves in pressure situation, we can take a step back, examine it, and see if that belongs to us or to somebody else. Because sometimes we can take on stuff that doesn't necessarily belong to us, and then we personalize it and we carry it with us. Or we can use that pressure to push us forward as a motivating factor. And I think that's always a good thing, because time itself is pressure on everyone except for toddlers. And a lot of times we forget that, right? That the clock is ticking. So that's my feedback and input on what we discussed so far.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from you, especially about not putting too much pressure on myself, especially as a young professional myself. I do feel there's times I do put too much pressure on myself, but what I learned today was learning to keep it at the workplace, but also don't take up other problems as my own. Don't personalize it. Don't take things personal. Like, I'm my own man. I got my own life. I got my own future. I got my own legacy. Why do I need to tag on other people's problems along that way? And so that was a good conversation I had, and I truly enjoyed it. I learned a lot.